Hello! Hi everyone! Welcome back to Woo Can Cook. My name is Wesley, and this is a show where we are slowly cooking our way through all of the food from my childhood. Today we're diving back into our series on Bay Area restaurant hacks with an homage to one of my favorite Korean barbecue spots here in town, which is Bold on Telegraph Avenue here in Oakland. While this spot is relatively new to the neighborhood, most Oakland locals will tell you that this particular block of Telegraph Avenue in the Temescal is well known for a number of Korean barbecue restaurants that occupy the block, Bold being one of its more recent additions. More specifically, today we'll be paying homage to their Bibimbap or barbecue beef bulgogi rice bowl. Now, right off the bat, I will start by saying that a bibimbap can contain a whole bunch of different veggies, including spinach, bean sprouts, kimchi, mushroom, seaweed, shredded daikon, and more. So for our version today, I just went ahead and picked out a few of my favorites that I think will be most accessible and easy to reproduce for folks at home. The highlight of the dish today, however, will of course be our barbecue beef bulgogi, which we're going to be making from some thinly sliced Angus beef tenderloin, as well as my personal favorite ingredient courtesy of a tip from the Korean Bap Sang blog, a bit of green apple. So, let's get into it. Okay, so to kick things off, we're jumping right into our bulgogi marinade here first so that it has as much time as possible to marinate. I'm starting off with our customary 4 cloves of crushed and minced garlic, followed by 1 tablespoon or about 1 inch's worth of finely minced ginger. Then moving on to our green apple, if you have a grater at this point, you can absolutely just peel and then grate this stuff into your marinade, but I will literally do anything to avoid cleaning those things, so I'm just doing a fine mince here instead. I ended up only using about 1/4 of the apple here, so go ahead and keep the rest for your snacking. Next up, moving on to our wet ingredients, this is 4 tablespoons of soy sauce to start, followed by 2 tablespoons of brown sugar to round things off. Then finally, getting to the highlight of the event, we're tackling this wonderful, very expensive cut of Angus beef tenderloin. Now, in the restaurants like at Bold, the bulgogi that you will find is cut extremely thin, I believe using a meat slicer in order to get those super thin strips of flash-seared beef. Obviously, I don't own one of those, so I'm just doing my very best to slice this as thinly as humanly possible against the grain to keep things from becoming too chewy. Then I'm tossing this into my marinade and we're letting it hang out for 30 minutes or up to 1 hour while we move on to our veggies. So at this point, I would encourage folks to start getting creative with the veggies that they incorporate, because a bibimbap can have a wide variety of veggies involved. For our version today, we're going to be going with a few of my favorite pantry staples because I think they are going to be the easiest for folks to reproduce, but again, use what you have. I'm starting off with a couple of medium carrots, peeled and then julienne. Then next up, I'm rehydrating about 6 shiitake mushrooms here for 20 minutes, then removing their stems because these things can get pretty chewy, and slicing them up into strips. Next up is some pickled daikon, which I'm slicing into coins here. Now, I know that the more traditional approach would probably be to shred this stuff into strips, but I actually think that this stuff is going to taste a lot better in larger coin shapes, because otherwise the shredded daikon will get lost in the shuffle of the rice bowl, which is my biggest gripe with most bibimbap bowls. Finally, I'm washing up some bean sprouts here, and we're moving on to our sauce. Now, our sauce here is actually serving 2 different purposes here, first as a seasoning during our wok fry, and second as a finishing sauce on top of everything. I'm kicking things off with a baseline of 4 tablespoons of soy sauce and 1 tablespoon of sesame oil to start, then followed by 2 tablespoons each of fish sauce for a bit of fishy fermented umami, and dry sake for some brightness and sweetness. Then on to our bold flavors. This is 3 tablespoons of gochujang going into the bowl next for a bit of heat. This stuff is pretty spicy, so if you are heat adverse, I'd recommend dialing this back a bit. Then finally, my favorite secret ingredient, about 2 tablespoons or as much as you can muster up of kimchi brine. This is gonna bring us some vinegary brightness and fishy umami. So if you can't get any brine out of your kimchi, which is often the case for me, I'd recommend adding about a single tablespoon of rice vinegar instead. Then I'm rounding things off with 2 cloves of crushed and minced garlic going straight into our sauce raw, followed by a pinch of sesame seed. Then I'm seasoning with kosher salt to taste, and we're ready to cook. Over on the stove, I've got a wok that's preheated as hot as possible, and as always, long yao for your non-stick surface. Now, what we're doing here is cooking each of our veggies individually instead of throwing everything into the wok like you would do with a Chinese stir-fry. This is so that we can get that nice plating with each individual ingredient that you'll recognize from most restaurant-style bibimbap bowls. This means, however, that we want to be careful with how much oil that we add on each fry, because remember that we're cooking 4 different things, so that cooking oil is going to start building up as we go, and we'll end up with a super oily rice bowl if we're not careful. So, to that end, I'm using a little bit of restaurant technique with our long yao here and adding 4 tablespoons of vegetable oil to the wok, giving it a long yao to coat, and then removing all but 1 tablespoon. Then I'm flash cooking my carrots here first, seasoned with a few tablespoons of my sauce, for just 1 minute to cook off some rawness and removing and setting aside. Then I'm wiping down my wok and repeating again with my bean sprouts next, followed by my shiitake mushrooms. If you've done it correctly, all 3 of your veggies should be well seasoned and par cooked just past their raw stage so that they're still crunchy and hopefully not too oily. Finally, I'm doing 1 more long yao and we're ready to sear our marinated steak next. I'm laying these bad boys flat side down onto my wok 1 piece at a time so that we can get a good solid sear about 2 minutes before tossing. Remember that with sears, the key is to let those things sit undisturbed, otherwise you'll ruin the sear. If you've done it correctly, you should have some nice, juicy, saucy, seared pieces of bulgogi steak that's gonna take all of your willpower to keep from eating it right now. Anyway, I'm repeating with my remaining steak. Mine took 2 batches altogether, and we're ready to plate this stuff up. Oh, I almost forgot. Before we wrap this up, the final crown jewel of any classic Korean rice bowl, I'm frying up a sunny side up egg here. I'm on high heat in a skillet and then spooning oil on top to get those nice lacy edges, and now we're ready to plate up. Going around the bowl, this is my bean sprouts first, then my beef bulgogi, then followed by my shiitake mushrooms, my carrots, daikon, and of course a healthy serving of kimchi. Finally, on top of all of this is a spoonful of my sauce, followed by my fried egg, and we're ready to eat. Now, a bibimbap is one of my absolute favorite Korean dishes of all time, and I've actually been eating these things since I was a little kid, even though I'm not Korean, because they come up in Hawaiian cuisine quite a bit. So, I was expecting to like this even if I messed it up, but god damn is this good. The individual cook on each of our veggies give them their own respective flavor, so each bite that I take stands on its own. Then, the brightness and the freshness of our kimchi and daikon add a nice refreshing crunch, and the large coin shapes of our daikon, as I expected, solve the problem of losing your shredded daikon in the bowl if you've ever experienced this. And of course, the showstopper of the whole meal is the bulgogi steak, which is crispy, juicy, and filled with flavor that absolutely justifies buying a $15 slab of Angus beef tenderloin for this meal. I can't stress this enough, if you're tired of eating boring teriyaki rice bowl dinners, this is gonna rock your freaking world. Seriously. Okay, so that's it everyone. I hope you enjoyed this and I hope you give this one a shot. I know that I used a couple of ingredients that's gonna be a little bit tough for some folks to track down, but hopefully I kept it relatively approachable. If you do have any questions about subs or omissions, though, feel free to drop those in the comments and we can brainstorm some ideas together. We'll also be cooking through this one live this coming Monday right here on YouTube at 6:30 PST, so feel free to drop in on that too if you want. As always, like, comment, subscribe, share, and I guess go forth and do internet things. All right, I'll see you soon. Tennessee whiskey, you're as sweet